desperate single mum took her sick daughter to work. The new CEO froze when the child called him daddy. The overhead lights in the marble lobby of Whitmore and Lane cast long reflections on the freshly polished floor. Elena Harper pushed her mop slowly, the familiar ache settling in her lower back. Her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun had strands falling over her face, damp with sweat. Her faded grey uniform clung gently to her slim frame, quietly masking the exhaustion she wore like a second skin. Outside, the Boston winter howled. Inside, the heat barely touched the lower service hallways. Elena paused, catching her breath, her hand instinctively checking the front pocket of her coat, where the tiny inhaler lay hidden. A soft cough echoed behind her. She turned quickly. Maya, her daughter, stood by the supply closet, wrapped in 2 layers of sweaters and a knitted scarf Elena had stitched together last Christmas. Her cheeks were flushed. The redness around her nose deepened since their cold walk from the run-down apartment. "Mama," Maya whispered, hugging her stuffed rabbit tighter. "My chest hurts a little." Elena crouched beside her, brushing Maya's blonde curls from her face. "I know, baby. Just a little longer. Okay, stay in the room, rest on the blanket, use your inhaler if it gets worse. I'll come check soon." Maya nodded solemnly. She was 5, but wise in ways Elena wished she didn't have to be. Elena opened the supply closet. Inside, she had laid out an old sleeping bag on a stack of flattened cardboard boxes, a flashlight, a few picture books, a water bottle, and half a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil. "This is your secret clubhouse. All right, no one comes in here, no one sees you. Can you do that for Mama?" Maya gave a small smile, like a spy. "Exactly," Elena whispered with a wink, kissing her forehead before quietly closing the door. She sighed and picked up her mop again, glancing at her watch. Just 3 more hours, then she could take Maya home and pray the clinic had space tomorrow. But 15 minutes later, when Elena returned with a granola bar scred from the breakroom trash, the supply closet was empty. "Maya," she hissed, heart skipping. She checked under the boxes behind the door. Nothing. Her chest tightened. "Not now, please, not now." Elena darted down the corridor, her sneakers silent, panic rising. She turned the corner into the executive wing, then froze. Down the hall, lit by the soft blue glow of recessed ceiling panels, stood her daughter. Maya was no longer alone. She was wrapped in the arms of a tall man in a tailored navy suit, his back bent to her height. He looked startled, unmoving. His brown hair, graying at the temples, framed a chiseled face she knew too well. Maya's voice echoed softly, "Daddy." Time collapsed. Elena's breath caught, her feet rooted to the floor. Her ears rang, every heartbeat deafening. No, it couldn't be. The man slowly lifted his head, expression unreadable, eyes wide, jaw slightly open. He gently let go of Maya, still crouched at her level. "Daddy," he repeated, puzzled. Elena's eyes burned. It was him, Colin Barrett, the man she had once planned a life with, the man who boarded a flight 6 years ago and never came back, presumed dead, grieved, buried in memory. Yet there he was, flesh and blood, speaking to the daughter he never knew existed. Her legs trembled. She clutched the wall, blinking fast. She had spent 6 years trying to let go, convincing herself it was over, that he was gone. But now he was here, alive, and talking to her daughter like some stranger from a dream. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Colin stood, eyes now turning to her. Their gazes met, and she flinched. Nothing, no recognition, only polite confusion, and that more than anything shattered her. She brought a trembling hand to her mouth, a sob caught in her chest. Not heartbreak, not fear, something deeper. Her heart, long buried in silence, had just awakened, and in that one soul-crushing moment, as his unfamiliar eyes met hers, Elena realized he had forgotten everything. But she hadn't. The love, the loss, the life they almost had still lived inside her, and as tears blurred her vision, her heart drifted back to the summer when it all began. 6 years earlier, Elena Harper was 25, sun-kissed and barefoot most days, working the morning shift at a small seaside cafe in Cape Haven, a sleepy coastal town where time moved slowly and dreams still smelled like salt water and fresh coffee. She had no grand plans back then, just enough to pay rent on a tiny 1-bedroom above the bakery, enough to keep painting on the weekends, and enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, life would surprise her with something beautiful. And then it did. He walked in on a Wednesday. Colin Barrett. He wore a plain white t-shirt and jeans, no watch, no phone in hand, but he carried a heaviness in his eyes that no amount of ocean breeze could wash away. He sat at the back table for hours, ordering nothing more than a black coffee, staring out the window at the sea like he was waiting for it to speak. She noticed him. He noticed her noticing. By Friday, he asked her name. By Sunday, he stayed past closing. He told her his story in pieces. His father had just passed away, a heart attack out of nowhere. Colin had quit his high-powered legal job in Boston and driven until the road ran out. Cape Haven was a stop, not a destination, or so he thought. But Alina made him stay. Their love was quick, but not careless. They spent their evenings walking the beach barefoot, stealing kisses under boardwalk lights, lying on the porch of the little cabin he had rented, dreaming up a life that seemed suddenly not just possible, but inevitable. He played piano in the evenings. She painted in silence, her head resting on his shoulder as the sky faded to navy. They talked about everything: children, marriage, building something that would last longer than the summer. And then one night, under the stars, Colin proposed. There was no ring, just his hand wrapped tightly around hers, his voice trembling as he said, "Let's stop pretending this is temporary." She said yes. Before he even finished the sentence, they decided to move back to Boston together. He would return ahead of her to get things in order. His apartment, a new job, a life for two. She would follow him in 2 weeks. They hugged on the pier, kissed until her lips hurt, and promised it was just the beginning. But it was the end. Colin never called when he landed because his plane never did. The news came 3 days later. Mechanical failure, a crash into the ocean off the coast of Connecticut. Wreckage scattered. No survivors confirmed. Bodies Alina didn't scream. She couldn't. She stared at the television screen in the cafe break room until someone turned it off. Then she went home and sat on the floor until morning came. She didn't tell anyone they had been engaged. It was too sacred, too unreal. Now, she quit the cafe, moved into a cheaper apartment, closed her paint kit, blocked out the sound of the piano. 2 months passed, then 3, then nausea, then a test. She found out she was pregnant on what would have been his birthday. There was no question she would keep the baby. It was the last piece of him she had. She named her Maya after the Sanskrit word for illusion, because that was what that summer had felt like. Too perfect to be real, too painful to forget. She built a life around her daughter. She worked nights so she could take care of Maya during the day. She never dated again. She never left Boston. And she never stopped wondering what their life might have looked like. If the plane had landed, if he had lived, if the summer had never ended. But she buried all of that for Maya, for survival, until tonight, until her past showed up in a navy suit and shiny shoes, crouching down in front of her daughter with no idea who she was or who he had been. Colin stood up slowly, still watching the little girl who had just called him daddy with wide, wondering eyes. He was clearly trying to process what had happened, but his body remained composed. Only his eyes flickered with confusion and something deeper. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run to Maya, pull her away, shield her from whatever heartbreak might follow, but her feet were frozen, her hands still covering her mouth, holding back 6 years of buried emotion. Colin finally turned. Their eyes met. He blinked once. Then again. There was no recognition. "Are you her mother?" he asked, his tone formal, polite, like he was speaking to a stranger. The words hit Alina like a slap. Her lips parted, but no sound came. "Yes," she managed finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I am." She wandered out of the back hallway. He said, glancing at Maya, who was now gripping the sleeve of his coat like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I was just trying to help her find someone." Alina nodded, heart hammering. "I am so sorry. She wasn't supposed to leave the room. I had no one to watch her tonight." Colin's expression softened a fraction. No harm done. Alina knelt beside Maya, trying to sound gentle despite the storm inside her. "Sweetheart, remember what Mummy said. You were supposed to stay in the closet, right?" Maya looked up with solemn eyes. "I got scared. I heard voices and I thought maybe I saw him from my dreams." Colin's brow furrowed. "Your dreams?" Maya turned toward him, voice low but clear. "You look like someone I dream about. I draw him in my pictures. Mummy says he's just This strange flutter in his chest, this pull he couldn't explain. He felt like he had seen her before. Not recently, not in this life, but in some version of it. He forced a small smile. "Well, I'm flattered. I suppose you have a vivid imagination." Maya tilted her head, eyes narrowing like she was still figuring something out. Elena stood quickly, placing a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We'll get out of your way, Mr. Barrett." He gave a slight nod. "It's all right. She's safe. That's what matters." Elena led Maya back down the hallway, her hands trembling, legs unsteady. Only when they were out of sight did she let her breath escape in a shaky gasp. He does not remember, not her smile, not her voice, not their summer, not their child. She pressed her palm to the wall, closing her eyes. She had imagined this moment, what she might say if he were alive, if by some miracle they met again. But never once had she pictured him looking at her with such emptiness. And yet Maya had run straight into his arms, called him daddy, and he hadn't pulled away. Elena opened her eyes and looked down at her daughter, still clinging to her hand. "I think I know him," Maya whispered. Elena knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I know, baby. Do you think he knows me, too?" Elena swallowed. "No," she said softly. "I don't think he knows anything right now." Maya looked up, but he felt like home. Elena pulled her close, holding her tightly. "I know, sweetheart, I know." In the dim hallway, with the hum of fluorescent lights above them, Elena's heart sank under the weight of what had just happened. Colin was alive, but the man who had once loved her, who had promised her forever, was gone. And now she had to decide whether to walk away or face the ghost of the man she used to love. Colin tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered. That little girl, her eyes, her voice, the way she had looked at him, like he was someone she had known all her life. He had returned to his office that night after the strange encounter, but instead of focusing on contracts or meetings, his mind kept circling back to her, to Maya, and to her mother, Elena Harper. The name sat heavily in his thoughts. He looked her up in the company's HR database, justified as a routine check, a responsible follow-up, but he knew it was more than that. She'd been working at the firm for 2 years, employed as an overnight custodian. No disciplinary records, never late, quiet, invisible. Except now she was impossible to forget. Colin stared at her file longer than necessary. It was bare, no emergency contact, no past employment listed. Just her name, her position, and a photograph that barely captured the tired grace she carried in person. He closed the file, but not the thoughts. Something about her felt tethered to a part of him he couldn't reach. A few days later, he stayed late, walking the halls to clear his mind. After midnight, he spotted something near the break, a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. He bent down and picked it up. A child's drawing, crayon strokes bright and messy filled the page. A blue ocean, a wooden house on stilts, yellow Sunday, 2 stick figures on the porch, one tall, one shorter, both smiling. Between them, a tiny figure with pigtails. Colin's breath caught. He stared at it for a long time. That house, he'd seen it before. Not in real life, not in photos, but in his dreams. In the quietest corners of sleep, flashes of waves crashing, laughter under open skies. Fingers intertwined as wind brushed across wooden steps. He always thought they were just dreams, fragments from nowhere. But this drawing, something tightened in his chest. He had to sit down. It hurt, not sharply, but deeply, and he didn't understand why. The next day, he wandered into a boutique on his lunch break, a small shop near the office, full of handmade scarves and knits. He wasn't sure why he was there until he saw it. A small golden yellow scarf, soft wool, child-sized with a delicate pattern that reminded him of sunlight slipping through leaves. He held it and felt peace. "I'll take this one," he said without hesitation. The woman behind the counter smiled. "Gift for your daughter." Colin hesitated. "No," he replied. "Not exactly." He had it wrapped in brown paper with white string and tucked it under his arm. That evening, just before leaving the office, he saw Maya near the janitor's closet sketching with crayons on the back of a shipping box. Elena was cleaning down the hall. Colin approached slowly. Maya looked up and beamed. "Hi, mister." He smiled and knelt beside her. "Hi, Maya." He handed her the package. "This is for you." Her eyes lit up. "For me?" He nodded. "I saw it, and I don't know why, but it reminded me of you. Maybe it's the color yellow, like sunshine." Maya tore the paper open and gasped. "It's beautiful." Elena arrived just as her daughter held the scarf up to her neck. She stopped cold, her eyes locked on the scarf, golden yellow, the same pattern she had once knitted by hand for Colin during that summer by the sea. Back then he used to get cold in the mornings before the sun rose. She would drape it over his shoulders, laughing when he called her the prettiest furnace he had ever seen. Her lips trembled. Colin stood, sensing her behind him. He turned slowly. "I hope it's okay," he said gently. It just felt right. Elena stared at the scarf, then at him. He didn't remember, but something inside him did. She blinked back tears and nodded, voice barely audible. "Yes, it's perfect." Colin had not been sleeping well. The dreams came in fragments, like watching someone else's life through frosted glass. A small wooden house, waves crashing outside an open window. A woman's laughter soft and full of light. The scent of salt and coffee. A piano melody haunting in its familiarity. And her face, not as it was now, tired and guarded, but younger, freer, eyes wide with trust. He would wake up breathless, sweating, her voice still echoing. He never saw her clearly, but every morning the name Elena sat on his tongue like a word he had forgotten how to say. That night he could not hold it in. He waited until her shift was nearly over, then found her wiping down tables in the empty break. She looked up, startled to see him. "We need to talk," Colin said. She nodded slowly and set the cloth aside. "I've been having dreams," he began, his voice tight, "about a house by the water, about you." Elena's breath hitched. Her eyes searched his face. "Tell me the truth," he said, stepping closer. "Did we know each other before? Did something happen between us that I don't remember?" Elena's hands trembled. She sat down and motioned for him to do the same. He did, eyes fixed on her. "Yes," she said softly, "we did." His jaw clenched. "We met 6 years ago, Cape Haven. You were grieving your father. I was working at a beach cafe. You stayed for the summer, and we fell in love." He inhaled sharply but said nothing. "We lived in a cabin," she continued. "You played piano. I painted. We talked about moving to Boston. You proposed." Colin blinked, stunned. "You left first to get things ready. I was supposed to join you, but your plane, it crashed." She paused. "They said you were dead, but you weren't." Colin leaned forward, gripping the table. "Why didn't you tell me any of this when we met again?" "Because you looked at me like I was no one," she whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you I'd cried for 6 years, and you didn't remember." Silence. His voice cracked. "And Maya?" Elena nodded, her eyes glistening. "She's your daughter." Colin stood abruptly like the ground had shifted. "My daughter," he echoed. "I have a child." Elena wiped her face. "I didn't know I was pregnant until after you were gone. I raised her alone. And when I saw you again, alive, but different, I didn't want to force the past onto you." His face was pale. "You should have told me. I had a right to know." "I know," she said, voice breaking, "but I was scared. You didn't remember me. What if you didn't want her?" "I didn't choose to forget," he snapped. "I lost everything, and now I find out I missed her whole life." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "I waited for you, Colin. I stood at the airport for hours. I called hospitals, searched lists, begged agents. Then I gave birth alone, named her without you, raised her without you. The man I loved was gone, and when you came back, you weren't him anymore." Colin turned away, breathing hard. They were quiet for a long time. Then he asked, voice rough, "Does she know?" "She knows she has a daddy," Elena said. "She dreams about him, draws him, believes he's real. And when she saw you, she just knew." Colin sat back down, burying his face in his hands. Elena watched him, heartbreaking all over again. The truth was no longer buried, but now that it had risen, it hurt just as much as the silence ever did. The snow had started falling in the late afternoon, soft and quiet at first, but by midnight, Boston was in a full-blown blizzard. Wind howled against the apartment windows, and the city had nearly shut down. Elena paced the living room, phone in hand, trying to get Maya to sleep on the couch. The little girl was curled under 3 blankets, flushed, breathing fast and shallow. The wheezing was louder now, too loud. Elena crouched beside her, pressing the back of her hand to Mia's forehead. Burning hot, she checked the inhaler. Empty. "Oh no," she whispered. Mia opened her eyes, glassy and dull. "Mama, it's hard to breathe." Elena's fingers shook as she dialed 911. The dispatcher answered calmly, but the reply hit like a punch. "No ambulances available in your area right now, ma'am. Roads are blocked. We're prioritizing critical trauma." "I'm sorry. She's 5, Elena said, voice cracking. "She has asthma. She can't breathe." "I understand. Try to keep her calm and warm. Help is on the way, but it might take time." Elena hung up, staring at the screen. Maya's breathing grew harsher. Her lips had a faint blue tint. Elena wrapped her in blankets and rocked her gently. "You're okay, baby," she whispered. just hang on. But panic clawed at her. No car. The nearest hospital nearly a mile away. She pulled on boots, grabbed a coat, and opened the door. Snow was waist deep, visibility barely 10 feet. She looked down at Maya, coughing and whimpering. She could not do this alone. Just then, headlights cut through the white haze. A car screeched to a stop. The driver's side door flung open. Colin, he was soaked. Snow clinging to his coat, his hair. He looked like he'd run through hell. I had a feeling, he said, breathless. Something told me to come. Alina did not question it. She handed Maya to him wordlessly. Colin cradled the girl close. Maya whimpered again, barely conscious. Hold on, sweetheart, he whispered. I've got you. The car was stuck, tires spinning. Colin looked at the road, the sky, then Elena. There's no way we'll get through that. Elena's voice cracked. What do we do? Colin tightened his grip on Maya. We run. Without another word, he turned into the storm. Elena followed. Maya's head rested against his shoulder. Her breaths were short, ragged. Colin leaned down and whispered, almost singing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." His voice was trembling from cold and fear. "You make me happy when skies are grey." He kept going over and over as if the words could keep her awake. Every time her body slackened, he whispered louder, "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you." They made it halfway before Alina stumbled. Colin helped her up with one arm, never letting go of Maya. Snow whipped their faces, but he kept walking. His arms ocked, legs numb, but he didn't stop. Finally, the hospital's red emergency sign appeared through the storm. Alina burst through the doors, screaming for help. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher. Colin laid Mia down, brushing snow from her face. Alina clutched her daughter's hand as the team wheeled her away. Minutes later, a doctor appeared, pulling off her gloves. "She's stable, airways open. You got her here just in time." A few more minutes, and she might have stopped breathing. Colin sat on the bench, head in his hands. Alina turned toward him, tears streaming. "You came," she whispered. He looked up at her, eyes raw. "I didn't know why," he said, "but I had to," and she knew. He still did not remember everything, but his heart had not forgotten. The hospital room was quiet, save for the soft beeping of the heart monitor and the rhythmic sound of Maya's breathing. She was asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily beneath a blanket of cartoon clouds. Her face had regained its color, and the faint smile at the corner of her lips brought Alina more relief than words ever could. Alina sat beside the bed, brushing a curl away from Maya's forehead. She looked peaceful now, as if the storm had never touched her. Behind her, Colin stood silently by the window. The blizzard had passed. The streets outside glistened under the pale morning sun, untouched snow reflecting soft gold through the glass. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Colin finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry." Alina turned to him. His voice was low, thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for forgetting, for not being there, for not knowing her, not knowing you. I don't remember, but I feel it. All of it. When I'm near her, when I'm near you." Alina looked at him, her eyes tired but open. "It's not your fault," she said gently. "You didn't choose to forget." He stepped closer. "But I'm choosing now. I may not have my memories, Alina, but I have this." He reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a small worn leather box. Alina froze. He opened it slowly and revealed a ring, simple silver, with a delicate engraving inside. Always, even in the quiet, her breath caught. She remembered that day on the beach, his voice trembling, her laugh caught in the wind. She had worn that ring for a week before he left for Boston, kissing it every night as she waited for him to call. After the crash, she had hidden it away, unable to look at it without breaking. "I found it," Colin said, "in a box of things from my old apartment, stuff that had been in storage all these years. I didn't know what it was at first, but when I saw it, I felt something, like it was waiting to come back to you." He stepped forward and gently placed the box in her hand, closing her fingers around it. Alina stared down at it, tears welling again, but softer this time. No longer grief, but release. Behind them, Maya stirred. She opened her eyes, slowly, blinking at the soft light. When she saw Colin and Alina standing side by side, her face lit up with sleepy joy. "Daddy," she whispered. Colin moved to her bedside immediately, kneeling so he was at eye level. "Hey, sunshine," he said, brushing her hand with his fingers. She glanced at the little box in Elena's hand, then back at Colin, her eyes twinkling. "You remember," Maya said, beaming. "I knew it." "You do." Colin smiled through the ache in his chest. I'm starting to. Maya sat up slightly and reached for his hand. You found Mama's ring. That means you remember love. And love is the most important part, right? Alina looked at her daughter, then at the man who had once been everything and somehow was becoming everything again. Colin nodded, voice quiet. Yes, I think I never really lost it. I just forgot where it lived. Maya giggled and leaned back into her pillows. Told you, Mama, he remembers. Alina couldn't hold back her smile anymore. In that moment, surrounded by warmth, healing, and the quiet breath of love rediscovered, she finally let go of the pain. Not because he remembered everything, but because he remembered her in the only way that ever truly mattered. 6 months later, the city skyline was just a memory in the rearview mirror. Colin Barrett stepped out of his old SUV, the scent of salt water hitting him like a wave of déjà vu. The breeze was soft with spring, and ahead stood the little wooden house with peeling white shutters and a wraparound porch, weathered but still standing. Beside him, Elena smiled, cradling a box of books. Her blonde hair danced in the wind, eyes full of light again. From the back seat, Maya tumbled out, sketchpad in one hand and a jar of seashells in the other. We're here, she shouted, running barefoot toward the porch. This is the house from Mummy's stories, right? Alina nodded. This is where it all began. It had taken time. Healing always did. But Colin had made a choice not to chase lost memories, but to build new ones. He had stepped down as CEO, surprising everyone, and opened a small legal clinic in a nearby working-class town, offering aid to those who needed it most. It was Elena's old dream, and though Colin did not fully remember, he had felt it through the way she spoke about justice, about people forgotten, through the way she looked at the world like it could still be changed. They were building that dream together now, and somehow this house by the sea had waited for them. Inside, the piano still stood in the corner, dusty but intact. Colin sat down and pressed a key. From the other room, Maya shouted, "Play the Sunshine song." He smiled and began to play, "You Are My Sunshine," with slightly unsteady fingers, just as Alina stepped in with flowers for the windowsill. That evening on the porch, Maya curled up with her crayons, sketching quietly. Alina brought out lemonade and sat beside her. "What you drawing this time?" Maya held up her page proudly. 3 stick figures stood hand in front of the house. A yellow sun above them, a blue sea behind, and in the corner, a black piano with little music notes floating into the wind. "This is us," Maya said. "You, me, and Daddy." Elena's eyes welled, but she smiled and kissed the top of her daughter's head. 2 weeks later, the beach glowed under soft lanterns and scattered rose petals. Alina wore a flowing white dress, barefoot in the sand. Colin waited by the water, his hand held out, quiet promise in his eyes. Maya stood between them in a yellow dress, clutching the same drawing like it was everything. The ceremony was simple, full of tears and laughter. No speeches, just 3 hearts, standing where love had once bloomed, broken, and bloomed again. That night, under a blanket of stars and the hush of waves, Alina sat alone for a moment with her journal. She wrote, not for the world, but for herself, for the girl she had been, and the woman who had endured. Her handwriting was soft, steady. Some memories don't need to be remembered, because true love always finds its way back home. And this time it had. Thank you for staying with soul-stirring stories until the very end of this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, if it brought a tear, a smile, or reminded you that love can heal anything, hit that subscribe button and smash the hype button to help soul-stirring stories keep sharing the tales that stay with you long after they end. We'll see you in the next story.